The global seafood industry is entering an unprecedented era, where advanced technology and massive fishing fleets harvest more than 90 million tons of seafood each year, turning the oceans into one of the largest food production systems on the planet. Alongside major powers such as China, Japan, and the United States, many island nations with rich fishing grounds and extensive coastlines are also accelerating their growth in the race for seafood production, gradually reshaping the global seafood map. So how does the seafood industry continue to maintain such enormous output and provide food for billions of people despite the pressures of climate change, environmental pollution, and declining marine resources? Today, join Agriculture Insight as we explore the rising seafood empires and the remarkable fishing methods that help fishermen tap into the living gold mines of the ocean. Now, let's begin. More than 100,000 tons of flounder are harvested each year, generating over $1 billion in revenue and making this unusual-looking fish one of East Asia's most valuable seafood resources. Yet catching them has never been easy. With both eyes positioned on one side of their head and the ability to disappear beneath the sand in an instant, flounders are often described as the ghosts of the seafloor. What is even more remarkable is that they are not born this way. As juveniles, flounders have one eye on each side of their head like most fish. After about 1 to 2 months, one eye gradually migrates to the opposite side, creating a unique body structure that allows them to lie flat on the seabed and camouflage themselves with extraordinary effectiveness. It is precisely this specialized lifestyle that makes flounders difficult to catch with conventional midwater fishing nets, forcing fishermen to rely on specialized harvesting methods to reach them. Bottom trawling has become one of the most effective methods for harvesting flounder. With a net opening approximately 20 to 40 meters wide, held open by a system of floats, steel cables, and heavy trawl doors, the entire gear is dragged along the seafloor at a speed of about 2 to 3 knots. At the front, rollers or ground gear continuously move across the sandy bottom, stirring up sediment and forcing flounders buried beneath the surface to emerge from their hiding places, where they are quickly swept into the cod end of the net behind. After hours of towing along the seabed, hydraulic winches begin hauling the entire system back to the surface, revealing layers of flat-bodied flounders piled together with crabs, shrimp, starfish, and many other small fish species. From there, they follow different paths. Most are sent to industrial processing lines for icing, filleting, inspection, and packaging as frozen export products. Meanwhile, the highest quality fish enter the world of premium sushi, where Japanese chefs transform their translucent, delicately sweet white flesh into the renowned delicacy known as hirame sashimi. If salmon is considered one of the symbols of the seafood industry in the United States, then in the Philippines, milkfish, locally known as Bangus, is almost the national fish of this island nation. So popular that it appears everywhere from simple family meals to high-end restaurants, Bangus has become an essential part of Filipino food culture. Taiwan and Indonesia are also among Asia's leading centers for milkfish farming and production. What makes milkfish special is its strong growth rate, ability to adapt to different environments, and naturally sweet, distinctive flavor. It can live in saltwater, brackish water, and freshwater, but it is most commonly raised in brackish coastal ponds and lagoons. After stocking, farmers usually need about 4 to 6 months, depending on conditions and farming methods, for the fish to reach a marketable weight of 400 to 800 grams each before harvest season begins. At large-scale farms covering hundreds of hectares, peak harvests can bring in around 200 tons of fish in a single day, equivalent to nearly $500,000 in product value, making milkfish one of the most profitable aquaculture industries in many Southeast Asian countries. To handle such enormous volumes within a short period of time, one of the first essential steps is lowering the pond's water level to just 0.5 to 0.8 meters before the nets are deployed. Although milkfish typically weigh only a few hundred grams, they are known for their strength and remarkable swimming speed. If the water level remains unchanged, entire schools can quickly disperse throughout the pond or slip through gaps before the nets are fully closed, making harvesting far more difficult, time-consuming, and labor-intensive. To further reduce stress and maintain the highest possible meat quality, boats or holding tanks preloaded with ice are positioned close to the harvesting area. As soon as the fish are lifted from the water, they are immediately chilled and transported to processing facilities, minimizing physical damage, slowing spoilage, and preserving maximum freshness. However, the greatest challenge comes during processing. Unlike many other fish species, milkfish is notorious for having more than 200 fine intermuscular bones distributed throughout its body. As a result, workers must use specialized pliers or tweezers to carefully remove the bones row by row. Only after this labor-intensive process is completed is the tender white flesh ready to be turned into boneless milkfish, grilled milkfish, crispy fried milkfish, and many other high-value seafood products. Once known as the money-printing machine of Hokkaido, Japan, in the late 19th century, herring transformed remote fishing villages into prosperous coastal towns. For the Japanese, this fish is not only a valuable food source, but also a symbol of wealth, prosperity, and the golden age of the fishing industry. But the greatest value of Japanese herring does not lie in its meat, but in kazunoko, the golden, crunchy roe, regarded as a lucky New Year delicacy. During the roe-bearing season, fishermen do not cast their nets at random. Instead, they track dense schools of herring near the shore, where millions of fish gather to spawn. Once the location is identified, purse seine nets are deployed around the entire school and gradually closed from the bottom, turning the open water into a giant pouch that traps the fish inside. In a single haul, the catch can reach up to 20 tons. When the fish arrive at port, speed becomes critical. They are immediately moved onto conveyor belts, where roe-bearing females are sorted and sent into chilled processing areas. There, workers must carefully slice open the belly to remove the 2 roe sacks intact without breaking them. After washing, deodorizing, and seasoning, these tightly packed masses of tiny eggs become kazunoko, famous for their distinctive, crunchy pop, with prices reaching up to $150 per kilogram, and a place as one of the essential dishes on Japan's New Year table. Yet although both are herring roe, the harvesting method in Canada is completely different from Japan. Without complex processing systems or fleets operating continuously offshore, more than $50 million is generated each year from one of nature's most spectacular displays, the herring spawning season. Every spring, billions of herring move together into shallow coastal waters to spawn, turning vast stretches of the sea milky white. This phenomenon is not caused by sand or sediment, but by the enormous amount of milt released by male herring to fertilize the eggs. After fertilization takes place, female herring attach layers of tiny eggs to seaweed, seagrass, reefs, and even pine branches that fishermen have deliberately placed underwater in advance. Within just a few hours, nearly every surface on the seafloor can be covered in a dense layer of roe, creating a white carpet stretching for kilometers. But for the ocean, this is also the signal that a massive feast has begun. But for the entire ocean, it is also the signal that a massive feast has begun. Seals, sea lions, whales, countless seabirds, and even land predators all arrive at once, drawn by a food source that is both abundant and rich in energy. Amid the chaos, countless herring lose their lives before they can fully complete their reproductive mission. Yet that very sacrifice goes on to nourish an entire ecosystem beyond them. While nature instinctively takes advantage of this abundant food source, humans welcome the spawning season with a strategy prepared days in advance. Just before the herring schools move into shallow waters, fishermen place pine branches or kelp lines into the sea as substrates for the eggs to attach to. As a result, millions of tiny eggs concentrate on a single surface, making the later harvest faster and more efficient. Unlike the Japanese pursuit of perfection with intact roe sacks, Canadians focus more on volume, freshness, and the quality of each harvested batch. Once the herring have completed their mission and moved away, boats finally enter the area to gently pull the kelp lines from the water, beginning a roe harvest season that lasts only for a very short time. Each branch is lifted from the water and carefully placed into large containers on the deck. Immediately afterward, a layer of salt is spread over the surface to support temporary preservation, reduce spoilage during transport, and keep the roe as fresh as possible. As soon as they arrive at port, the roe-covered branches are sent to processing facilities, where they are washed, sorted, handled according to hygiene standards, and carefully packaged before being shipped to markets around the world. While Japanese salted herring roe stands out for its rich flavor and signature crunch created through the seasoning process, Canada's roe on kelp offers a cleaner, fresher taste while preserving the natural flavor of the sea. In the premium market, this specialty can reach 80 to 150s per kilogram, and in many segments, it can sell for 2 to 4 times more than common Japanese salted herring roe. From a wild species native to the Pacific coast, whiteleg shrimp has now risen to account for nearly 80% of global farmed shrimp production, forming the foundation of an industry worth more than $75 billion each year. The journey of a whiteleg shrimp begins with carefully selected broodstock, where millions of eggs are fertilized and hatch into larvae. In their first days of life, they are raised in closed nursery tanks, where temperature, salinity, oxygen levels, and water quality are controlled almost perfectly. After 18 to 20 days of development, the young shrimp are then packed into plastic bags filled with pure oxygen, turning each bag into a mobile nursery tank. After that, thousands of bags of shrimp post-larvae are floated on the pond surface to balance temperature and water conditions. Here, the shrimp are raised in high-tech, fully lined ponds, where dozens of paddle wheel aerators run day and night to continuously add oxygen and keep the environment stable. After about 90 to 120 days of farming, once the shrimp reach market size, harvesters drag massive nets through the pond to concentrate millions of shrimp into a small area. As they sense their living space shrinking, the shrimp thrash violently and try to escape, making the entire water surface erupt like a silver storm beneath the water. This is also when the shrimp are most vulnerable to stress, so every minute after netting plays a crucial role in determining the freshness and quality of the final product. The shrimp are then transported to the factory within just 10 to 15 minutes to go through a series of strict processing steps. After being washed, chilled, and sorted by size, some are processed into cooked shrimp, while the rest are directly frozen using IQF technology at temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius to preserve their natural freshness. Within just a few hours, shrimp that were still swimming in farm ponds have become export products shipped around the world. The world knows tuna as a symbol of Japan, but the truth is that the largest tuna producer is not Japan. It is Indonesia. As the world's largest island nation, Indonesia is surrounded by some of the richest tuna fishing grounds on Earth. Each year, the country catches around 1 million tons of tuna, accounting for about 16% of global supply and generating more than $900 million in export value. Indonesia's strength does not lie in million-dollar bluefin tuna like Japan's, but in the massive production of skipjack and yellowfin tuna, the main raw materials for canned tuna, frozen tuna, and tuna loins serving the global market. Unlike many industrial fleets in Japan or the United States that use giant purse seines and advanced mechanized systems, Indonesia is known for one-by-one tuna fishing, catching each fish individually by pole and line or hand line, a technique that has existed for centuries. On the deck, dozens of fishermen stand shoulder to shoulder, continuously swinging bamboo or composite poles toward the water, which is boiling with schools of tuna. Along the sides of the vessel, seawater is sprayed continuously to create white foam, while live bait fish are released to trigger the tuna's feeding instinct. The moment a tuna strikes the hook, the fishermen immediately jerk their poles, bringing the fish aboard within seconds. Although less productive than industrial fishing vessels, this one-by-one method is highly regarded for its sustainability. It results in very little bycatch and helps preserve meat quality, as the fish suffer far less damage during capture. For this reason, despite the rise of modern fishing technology, thousands of Indonesian fishermen continue to practice traditional pole and line fishing, turning every voyage into a direct contest between humans and one of the ocean's most efficient predators. Once ashore, the highest quality tuna are quickly transported to processing facilities for filleting, grading, and packaging for premium markets around the world. Most of the remaining catch is processed into frozen tuna or canned tuna, helping power a multi-billion-dollar industry and cementing Indonesia's position as the world's leading tuna-producing nation. Carrying the burden of rebuilding many of Japan's coastal communities after the devastating 2011 tsunami, mussels are far more than just seafood to the Japanese. They are a source of livelihood for thousands of families, generating more than $4 billion in economic value each year. Unlike countries such as the Netherlands, France, and the United States, where shellfish are often dredged directly from the seabed or cultivated in nearshore cages, Japanese mussels are raised on massive suspended longline systems in some of the most nutrient-rich waters on Earth. Fueled by the convergence of the warm Kuroshio Current and the cold Oyashio Current, thousands of mussels densely cover each rope within just 12 to 24 months, requiring virtually no industrial feed. When harvest season arrives, specialized vessels move along the farming lines and use hydraulic winches to haul the mussel-laden ropes from the sea onto the deck. There, the ropes pass through mechanical stripping systems, where continuously rotating rollers remove thousands of mussels in just minutes. The harvested mussels then flow onto conveyor belts and into enormous collection bags, ready to be transported to processing facilities. Once they arrive at the harbor, the mussels are transported directly to processing facilities, where they undergo a series of rigorous cleaning procedures. They pass through multiple washing tanks, high-pressure water spray systems, and rotating mechanical drums designed to remove mud, sand, seaweed, and other organisms attached to their shells. This step is particularly important because mussels are filter feeders, making them highly susceptible to retaining impurities from the surrounding seawater. After being sorted and inspected for quality, the mussels are either packaged fresh or further processed through a series of value-added operations, including steaming, meat extraction, vacuum sealing, and flash freezing. The finished products are then distributed to supermarkets, restaurants, and export markets around the world. Often referred to as the white pearl of the ocean, scallops generate approximately $3 billion in annual revenue and rank among Hokkaido's most valuable seafood products. Like mussels, their journey begins at sea. However, instead of growing in dense clusters along cultivation ropes, individual scallops are suspended separately in multi-tiered cage systems. This approach reduces competition and provides each scallop with sufficient space to develop evenly. Throughout their growth cycle, nutrient-rich cold currents continuously flow through the cages, delivering a steady supply of natural food and helping form the thick white adductor mussel that ultimately determines the premium market value of Japanese scallops. When harvest season arrives, hydraulic cranes lift cultivation lines stretching tens of meters from the sea, revealing thousands of scallops densely attached like a fully assembled production chain. The scallops are quickly removed on deck, rinsed with seawater, and transported directly to processing facilities within just a few hours. From this point onward, the process shifts into a tightly controlled operation. High-pressure water jets operating at 5 to 6 bar thoroughly clean every groove of the shell before the scallops are shucked while still alive to extract the prized white adductor muscle with maximum precision. The meat is then washed, graded, and subjected to rapid freezing at -40°C, locking in its texture and natural sweetness. By the time packaging is complete, each tray of scallops represents far more than seafood. It is the product of a seamless production chain, one in which the ocean does not merely provide the resource, but actively contributes to every stage of value creation. Leaving behind the scallop farms beneath the ocean, we arrive at Ariake Bay, where seaweed not only forms the soul of Japanese sushi, but also supports a nori industry worth more than $1 billion annually. In Japan, seaweed is cultivated on vast marine farms stretching across coastal waters. Although it shares the same origin as Korean gim, nori is produced with a fundamentally different philosophy, preserving its natural flavor rather than masking it with seasonings. Around November, when seawater temperatures fall below 12°C, nori enters its most vigorous growth phase of the year. As harvest season begins, the enormous cultivation nets that have remained submerged beneath the surface are gradually lifted by specialized vessels, revealing vast walls of seaweed stretching across the ocean. As the harvesting vessel moves along the cultivation nets, rotating blades spinning thousands of times per minute carefully trim only the upper portion of the seaweed, leaving approximately 5 centimeters of living base intact so it can regenerate for the next harvest. As a result, this is no longer a simple extraction process, but rather the management of an underwater crop, where each harvest marks the beginning of a new growth cycle. Immediately after leaving the cutting system, the freshly harvested seaweed is compressed into mesh bags weighing up to nearly 1 ton and transported ashore as quickly as possible to preserve its quality and freshness. At the processing facility, the seaweed passes through large-scale recirculating washing systems designed to remove sand, sediment, and other impurities. What surprises many people, however, is that the journey from fresh seaweed to a finished sheet of nori is not quite what they imagine. Rather than being dried whole, the clean seaweed is finely chopped and processed using a method remarkably similar to papermaking. The resulting slurry is spread onto molds, pressed into thin layers, and continuously dried to produce nori sheets with uniform thickness, color, and texture. From there, the sheets are transformed into the finished nori products familiar to consumers around the world. The thin layers of seaweed found in countless bento boxes, sushi rolls, and rice rolls enjoyed every day across the globe. Looking like a pineapple that lives beneath the sea, sea squirts are both one of the ocean's natural biological filtration systems and a high-value delicacy, generating tens of millions of dollars annually for Japan's coastal aquaculture regions. While nori requires only a few weeks to grow and mussels typically reach market size within 1 to 2 years, Japanese sea squirts demand a much longer cultivation period of 2 to 3 years. The process begins when juvenile sea squirts are attached to suspended cultivation ropes beneath the sea, where they firmly anchor themselves and gradually grow through multiple cold water seasons. Because of this lengthy waiting period, every harvest carries special significance. When the season arrives, specialized vessels travel along cultivation lines stretching hundreds of meters and use hydraulic winches to continuously lift rope after rope, densely covered with sea squirts from the ocean onto the deck. Immediately afterward, the sea squirts pass through specialized separation machines where continuously rotating rollers remove each cluster from the cultivation ropes. The freshly harvested sea squirts are then quickly loaded onto the vessel and transported ashore to preserve maximum freshness. Before reaching processing facilities, workers sort the harvest, cut individual sea squirts from their attachment stalks, and thoroughly remove seaweed, sediment, and other organisms clinging to the outer surface. Following this initial cleaning stage, the sea squirts are rapidly distributed to restaurants and processing facilities. Beneath their rough, spiky exterior lies a bright orange flesh renowned for its rich sweetness, distinctive ocean flavor, and unique balance of crisp and tender textures. In Japan, sea squirts are commonly served as sashimi, seafood rice bowls, or grilled dishes, making them one of the most sought-after marine delicacies in many coastal regions. Consuming nearly 80% of the world's sea urchins, Japan has transformed these spiny creatures of the seafloor into a high-value industry, where the prized uni inside can sell for as much as $500 per kilogram. To harvest this soft gold, divers must descend to the ocean floor, where black and purple sea urchins cling tightly to rocks, concealing one of the most sought-after delicacies in Japanese cuisine. Equipped with little more than a mask, thick gloves, and a small metal hook, divers carefully search meter by meter across the seafloor, weaving through underwater forests of swaying kelp in search of the largest and most mature sea urchins. At times, the job feels more like a treasure hunt than a fishing operation, because the true value lies not in the creature's spiny exterior, but hidden deep within its shell. Every reach of the hand is a test of experience. A single careless movement can damage the delicate uni inside and significantly reduce its market value. Yet the greatest challenge is not the sea urchin itself, but the ocean. Strong currents, cold temperatures, limited visibility, and a finite air supply turn every dive into a race against time. The reward, however, can be substantial. A skilled diver may harvest several hundred sea urchins in a single day, helping transform these spiny creatures into one of Japan's most valuable seafood industries. As soon as they reach shore, the sea urchins are transported directly to processing facilities, where workers use specialized scissors to cut through the hard, spiny shells and carefully extract each lobe of uni with small spoons. Every movement must be executed with absolute precision, as even a minor scratch can significantly reduce the product's value. After cleaning, the finest pieces of uni are hand-arranged into trays before making their way to premium sushi counters. Without wings or bones, yet capable of launching itself from the ocean surface and gliding up to 30 meters at speeds approaching 40 kilometers per hour, Totorodes pacificus is the famous flying squid that helps generate billions of dollars annually for Japan's squid fishing industry. For many coastal communities, it is a vital source of livelihood, which is why every year from June to November, thousands of squid fishing vessels illuminate the waters around Japan, creating one of the country's most vibrant and economically important fisheries. Squid fishing vessels typically leave port in the late afternoon, but the real hunt does not begin until darkness blankets the sea. Unlike many fisheries that must actively pursue their catch, Totorodes pacificus is naturally attracted to light. Taking advantage of this behavior, the Japanese have developed a harvesting method that has become almost a national symbol: light-based squid fishing. On vessels ranging from 30 to 60 meters in length, hundreds of high-powered lamps are switched on simultaneously, transforming the surrounding waters into a brilliant band of light across the ocean. Beneath this glow operates one of the most distinctive automated fishing systems in Japan's seafood industry. Hundreds of illuminated artificial jigs move continuously up and down in synchronized motion, while sonar and advanced detection equipment scan waters 50 to 150 meters deep to pinpoint the exact location of squid schools. Once the squid gather near the surface, the entire system shifts into full operation. In just a few hours, a single vessel can haul aboard between 1 and 3 tons of squid, and even more on particularly productive nights. Only hours after leaving the ocean, the squid arrive at processing facilities where they are cleaned, eviscerated, flash frozen, and packaged in a race against time to preserve the exceptional freshness carried in from the night sea. Now, let's step into the world of Japanese whales and uncover fascinating, little-known facts before exploring the massive hunting operations and processing chain behind these ocean giants. The minke whale is a small baleen whale, measuring about 7 to 10 meters in length and weighing up to nearly 10 tons. It can reach speeds of over 30 kilometers per hour when accelerating. With an average lifespan of around 50 years, minke whales grow slowly, and females typically give birth to only one calf after nearly a year of pregnancy, a trait that makes resource management particularly sensitive. After World War II, whale meat once accounted for nearly 50% of Japan's total meat consumption during a time of severe food shortages. However, as the economy recovered and food options diversified, consumption declined sharply and now represents only about 0.1% of the nation's total meat intake. Even so, Japan continues to harvest approximately 200 to 300 minke whales each year within its exclusive economic zone, maintaining that the practice is legal and regulated. Minke whale meat has a distinctive dark red color due to its high myoglobin content, even deeper in tone than beef. The texture is firm, fine-grained, and relatively lean. When eaten raw, it has a mild sweetness with a subtle hint of the sea. When grilled, its flavor is often described as a blend between beef and tuna. It is rich in protein, iron, and omega-3 fatty acids, but because it may contain mercury, consumption is generally recommended in moderation. Whaling in Japan has become the center of one of the most prolonged and divisive debates in the modern world. The so-called whale war intensified when Japan withdrew from the International Whaling Commission, which had imposed a commercial whaling moratorium in 1986. Conservation groups such as Sea Shepherd Conservation Society have repeatedly confronted whaling vessels at sea, turning the issue into a global media flashpoint. Today, the story of Japanese whaling is no longer just about food. It represents the intersection of tradition, science, economics, and conservation, where a nearly 10-ton marine giant has become a symbol of how humanity chooses to exploit or protect nature in the 21st century. Whale reproduction is a slow yet highly strategic cycle, unfolding across the vast ocean. In species such as the minke whale, the breeding season typically occurs in winter, from around December to March, when they leave cold, food-rich waters and migrate toward warmer seas. Male whales produce sequences of low-frequency sounds that can travel for dozens of kilometers underwater. The more stable, rhythmic, and sustained the calls, the stronger the signal of health and vitality, essentially a biological resume transmitted through the sea. After fertilization, the female carries her calf for about 10 to 11 months. Calving usually takes place in late winter or early spring, in warm, calmer waters where survival rates are higher. Almost always, a single calf is born, measuring about 2 to 3 meters in length and weighing close to a ton. During the first 6 months, the calf feeds on its mother's rich, high-fat milk, growing rapidly in preparation for its first migration. Throughout this time, the mother remains close, teaching her calf how to surface for air, how to dive, and how to adapt to the rhythms of the ocean. A slow but deliberate investment characteristic of one of the ocean's most powerful marine mammals. Japan's hunting of the minke whale today primarily takes place within its 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, offshore from areas such as Hokkaido, the Sanriku coast, and parts of the Sea of Japan. The season typically begins in late spring and extends into early autumn when sea conditions are more stable and whales move along established feeding routes. Each whaling vessel usually carries around 15 to 25 crew members, including a captain, navigators, engineers, and a specialized harpoon team. The primary tool is a bow-mounted harpoon cannon fitted with an explosive tip, a technology refined over more than a century to improve accuracy and shorten the time needed to secure the animal. The strategy does not rely on high-speed pursuit, but rather on tracking migration patterns and carefully observing the whale's surfacing behavior. Once a target is identified, the vessel approaches from behind or at an angle to maintain a steady firing position, timing the shot to the brief moment the whale surfaces to breathe, often lasting only a few seconds. All operations are conducted under annual quotas and require detailed catch reporting at the end of each season. Across thousands of square kilometers of open sea, the hunt represents a fusion of traditional seafaring knowledge and modern mechanical precision, a practice defined more by calculation than by force. When a minke whale is fully secured on deck, the clock essentially starts ticking. In the first few minutes, a processing team, often around 20 crew members, must stabilize the nearly 10-meter-long body using steel hooks, chains, and hydraulic winches to prevent it from shifting as the vessel continues to roll with the waves. The first step is opening the abdominal cavity. Specialized knives with blades measuring 40 to 60 centimeters are used to make a precise incision along the belly. Once the cavity is opened, internal pressure is released, making the next stages safer. The organs are removed in sequence. The stomach and intestines first to reduce weight, followed by the heart, liver, and lungs. The stomach alone can weigh up to 300 kilograms, depending on its contents. Next comes the removal of the blubber, a thick layer of fat averaging 10 to 20 centimeters, covering the body like a biological shield. The fat is cut in long parallel strips, then lifted in massive sections weighing hundreds of kilograms using steel hooks and winches. In the 19th century, blubber was rendered into industrial oil. Today, it is primarily used for culinary purposes or oil extraction. Once the blubber is removed, the deep red muscle beneath becomes visible. The long back muscles, considered the most valuable, are separated into large sections. Industrial saws are used to detach ribs and vertebrae. The meat is then rinsed with clean seawater and transferred immediately into cold storage maintained at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. The fins and tail are processed last. The tail, which generates the whale's propulsion, contains especially dense and powerful muscle fibers, making it structurally tougher than the rest of the body. The entire procedure typically takes 3 to 4 hours, depending on sea conditions. Every movement follows a fixed sequence, coordinated precisely between people and machinery, a massive processing operation carried out at sea, where even minutes of delay can affect the final product's quality. Once properly chilled, the meat moves to the portioning and packaging stage. Large muscle blocks are cut into standardized commercial portions, typically weighing 2 to 5 kilograms, or sliced thinner depending on market demand. Each piece is inspected for color, texture, and core temperature before being vacuum sealed to minimize oxidation and preserve quality. The packages are then labeled with processing dates and harvest location details. Finally, the products are stored in deep freeze facilities at approximately 9 to 20 degrees to 9 to 30 degrees Celsius, ready for distribution to seafood markets, restaurants, or further processing centers. Now, have a napkin ready because you might start craving it once you see how minke whale is transformed into sushi. Minke whale meat is typically divided into three main cuts: the back loin, deep red, lean and fine-grained, considered the most premium; the belly, lightly marbled and softer with a richer mouthfeel; and the section near the tail, where the muscle fibers are thicker and firmer. For sushi, chefs prefer the back loin close to the spine because of its intense, ruby-like color and natural elasticity when sliced. Whale sushi is cut thin, about 3 to 5 millimeters, preserving tenderness while still allowing the structure of the muscle fibers to be felt. Placed over warm vinegared rice, the dark red slice contrasts strikingly with the white grains, minimal yet visually bold. Its flavor is often described as a cross between lean beef and ocean tuna. Rich, slightly sweet, with a subtle marine note, but not overly fishy. Many restaurants serve it as traditional nigiri, with just a touch of wasabi and a light dip in soy sauce to avoid overpowering the natural taste. In some places, the surface is briefly seared, aburi, releasing a faint aroma from the thin layer of fat. In Japan, whale meat generally sells for around $15 to $30 per kilogram, depending on the cut and supply. In specialty restaurants, a single piece of whale sushi may cost $4 to $8. Though not widely consumed, those deep red slices on a traditional sushi counter still carry a sense of rarity and boldness, enough to tempt the curious into trying it at least once. But beyond meat and its visible value, there's something few people expect: a quiet treasure of the ocean: whale poop. When whales dive hundreds of meters to feed and then return to the surface to breathe and defecate, they transport iron and nutrients from the deep sea back into sunlit waters. A single large whale can release hundreds of kilograms of waste per day, fueling what scientists call the whale pump. This natural fertilization boosts phytoplankton growth, the microscopic organisms responsible for producing nearly 50% of the oxygen we breathe, while also helping absorb carbon from the atmosphere. Yet there is another, far rarer form of waste, and far more valuable: ambergris. This substance forms almost exclusively inside the digestive system of the sperm whale as it processes squid. After drifting at sea for years, the rough, waxy mass oxidizes under sun and salt water, transforming from a harsh odor into a warm, sweet, complex scent. In the luxury perfume industry, ambergris has been valued at $20,000 to $50,000 per kilogram for its extraordinary ability to fix and extend fragrance longevity for hours, even days. From an unremarkable floating lump to floating gold, it proves that the ocean hides treasures in the most unexpected forms. No species of crab bears a scientific name as self-assured as the blue crab, Calanectes sapidus, which literally means the skillful and savory swimmer. And reality proves it. Ranging from coastal shallows to muddy bottoms as deep as 300 feet, blue crabs swim sideways at remarkable speed thanks to their paddle-shaped rear legs, enabling sudden bursts of acceleration and near-instant directional changes. With long front claws and sharp edges, they are especially effective predators of mollusks. In Chesapeake Bay, the largest brackish lagoon system in the United States, blue crabs generate $300 million each year, sustaining thousands of watermen through a traditional fishing livelihood rooted across generations. Compared with red crabs, the blue crab's advantage is most evident after processing: a high meat yield, stable lean protein content, firm yet tender texture, and low loss rates, factors that determine its superior commercial value. Yet behind that appealing quality, blue crabs are in fact difficult to domesticate. They are cannibalistic and molt on average more than 20 times within a short lifespan of just 3 to 4 years. For this reason, nearly all commercial blue crabs today still come from wild capture. because only large, constantly dynamic environments can adequately disperse individuals, disrupt synchronized molting cycles, and preserve survival rates. So what happens during each molting cycle that turns blue crab farming into such a high-risk gamble? Blue crabs do not grow by gradually expanding within their old shells. Instead, they must completely shed their mineralized exoskeleton to create space for their bodies to develop. Before molting, a blue crab pumps water into its body, increasing internal pressure until the rear edge of the carapace, the fixed weak point in its biological structure, splits open. In just about 10 minutes, the crab withdraws its head and pulls out each leg and claw, leaving behind an almost perfectly intact shell. Male blue crabs mate with females immediately after the females have molted, the only moment when the shell is still soft. Afterward, the females carry their eggs and migrate offshore into saltwater to spawn. Each individual can produce millions of eggs, but only a tiny fraction survive and return to brackish waters to reach adulthood. From May onward, rising water temperatures awaken the entire brackish ecosystem, ushering blue crabs into the most intensive harvesting season of the year. Before heading out to sea, bait is prepared simply but effectively. Chicken meat or low-value fish, cheap protein sources with strong odors that suit the blue crab's scavenging behavior and crawling for food reflex. The bait is placed inside square bottom set traps, the primary fishing gear of the commercial blue crab industry. The square shape allows the trap to remain stable on soft mud. One-way funnel entrances guide crabs inward while preventing escape, and the interior space is large enough to keep crabs alive while minimizing claw damage. Thanks to this design, each trap can yield 1 to 3 kilograms of crab per day, and a single vessel may operate from several hundred to over 1,000 traps, generating a large yet steady supply for live crab and softshell crab markets. However, blue crab harvesting is not confined solely to peak season. As water temperatures fall, crabs become less active and remain close to the seabed, reducing the effectiveness of fixed traps. To take advantage of this transitional period, light bottom trawling is permitted within very limited time windows, due to the risk of crab injury and direct impacts on benthic habitats. Alongside large-scale harvesting zones, blue crabs are still found close to shore, especially around river mouths and shallow lagoons. In long-established brackish water communities, residents simply follow the tidal rhythm, setting traps near the shoreline for 2 to 4 hours per cycle to collect live blue crabs. These catches often move directly from the landing site to family meals or local markets the same day, tightly linking crab fishing with the everyday rhythm of life in brackish coastal communities. Leaving the highly dynamic brackish waters, a portion of blue crabs is transported directly to processing plants within just a few hours, where every handling step must race against time. At the plant, the first step is icing and rapid chilling to suppress cellular respiration and enzymatic activity, key factors that preserve meat firmness, maintain natural sweetness, and minimize value loss throughout the cold chain. Not every individual is eligible to enter this processing line. Commercial-grade blue crabs typically require a carapace width of at least 5 inches, as only at this size does the meat yield sufficiently offset the costs of processing, transportation, and cold storage, ensuring economic efficiency across the entire operation. On the whole crab processing line, chilled crabs are transferred to the packaging area, where they are graded, non-conforming individuals are removed, and the remaining crabs are arranged in plastic trays. The crabs are then placed in a freezing chamber until the core temperature reaches approximately 18 degrees Celsius, ensuring complete freezing. Afterward, The glazing layer forms on the crab's surface to reduce moisture loss and oxidation. The crabs are finally packaged, arranged vertically, and secured to prevent damage during transportation and cold storage.